¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
Hi everybody, welcome to CHIRLA TV. It's great to be back here with you all again. And so I am joined here today by a few guests. Once it's more than 3 people, it's a party. So this party that we have here today is a redistricting party. We'll learn all about redistricting here in California and across the country with our guests here today. With me is Apolonio Morales. How are you doing, Polo?
I'm doing good.
Good to have you. And we have out here as well, Sky Allen. How are you, Sky?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
And joining us again is Karen Diaz. ¿Cómo estás, Karen?
Good to be here.
Excellent. Can you all tell me a little bit about your expertise around the field around redistricting? Start with you, Polo.
Yeah, so for me, I was able to be part of the Redistricting Commission, so comisionado. I asked my mom to call me that now, because that...
You have to, you know?
So the role is a 10-year gig, so I have 9 more years to run that out till I can't be called commissioner anymore. So, but yeah, I was part of the first independent redistricting commission in Los Angeles County.
Excellent. You can't be expected to be in late nights, Zoom calls and not be called comisionado. You have to write it out.
I got to write it out, yeah.
And Sky?
I work for an organization called IE United. Inland Empire United is the full title. We do a lot of organizing in San Bernardino and Riverside counties, and our role was informing the community about the redistricting process, mobilizing their testimony, and then getting their feedback taken to the state or to the county so that they could draw the lines with informed information.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Karen?
Similar to Sky, I was managing the redistricting campaign with us at CHIRLA. So we had the Ponte en el Mapa campaign. It was a continuation of the Contamos Contigo campaign that we did in 2020 for the 2020 census. And my role was to get the immigrant community involved in this. Oftentimes, the immigrant community doesn't know that they can participate in different civic engagement processes. So tal vez no podemos salir a votar, pero sí nos podemos contar en el censo y compartir nuestro testimonio acerca de por qué queremos nuestra comunidad junta.
Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to draw the line since we're talking about drawing lines. I'm drawing the line here. What is redistricting? Because y'all have dropped it, I have dropped it, but we haven't got into what redistricting is. Who wants to take that one?
So every 10 years, the population changes. We know in 2020, we counted ourselves, but why do we count ourselves? Because sometimes people are born, people pass away, people move around from city to city, from state to state. So once we get the new count of the population, we have to adjust the different assembly maps, the congressional maps, to make sure that they have equal population. So it's the redrawing of the districts or the jurisdictions so we can have equal population. And into that, we take into consideration like the Latino community, the Asian community, and like the Black community to make sure that they have equal representation.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot, and that's a lot of important stuff too, given that it only happens once every 10 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is really intense, so no pressure to us all here to get it right and draw these lines, because these lines will represent what?
Well, there's, in terms of representation, there's different districts. So there's the congressional district, right, the larger districts. Then you start getting into the county districts, the city districts, the school board, the school districts. So it's quite a process. And I think a lot of folks don't understand how much work it actually entails to be able to get community input on the one hand, to be able to inform the decisions by the governing board, to be able to draw the new lines.
And so, Sky, speaking of that, what was the process for the community members? What did they think about the whole process?
We really tried to tie it all together in thinking not just about census is one thing, and then redistricting is one thing, and then elections are one thing. So people are feeling like they always have to do something, but talking about it as one ecosystem, right? So in order to vote, we have to vote in districts. You create those districts by looking at your census numbers. Once you have the census numbers, that factors into the new districts, and the new districts factors into elections. So thinking of it as a cycle, and we're at this point in the cycle. So thinking about it like that really helped community members kind of understand a little bit more. And then it was just going through all the technical pieces, right? So hosting community workshops to say like, this is what it is, this is how it connects to what we just did last year with the census. This is how you can get involved. This is a picture of what your current district looks like. What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? Where do you go to eat? Where do you go to shop? Where do you go to church? And all of that helps us figure out new information so we can draw new districts. And once you explain it like that, it becomes a little bit easier for folks to comprehend.
Thank you all for your work in this process. And I'm glad that I'm hearing that some positive stuff that came out of all this work, right? Because the worst part of it all is investing so much energy and time and then womp, womp, womp. We've been there. We've all been there. We're Team L, learning. It's a learning curve, and we've learned a lot. Pero regresamos ahorita after this really brief break, so stick around.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
Welcome back to CHIRLA TV. Again, happy to be here with you all. We're talking about redistricting. Let's go ahead and go into a few details as to what we saw. What are some of the changes that happened in this redistricting process that already occurred? We'll start with you, Polo.
Yeah, so it's important to remember, like, these redistricting commissions, the way that they're set up is not all of them are independent. And so you have, majority Republicans, majority Democrats making a lot of decisions for the folks that already live in specific districts. But the independent commissions are the ones that were created, especially here in LA County, to be able to take into consideration folks that are from the community and not appointed to be part of the larger commission. And so as an independent commission, we still had to follow by the rules, right? The rules are the Voting Rights Act. And so we have to think about the demographics that exist in a particular district. Who are the people that live in there? What are the communities of interest that make up that community? We also have to take into consideration, you can't draw districts that are really oddly shaped to benefit particular candidates or parties. And so all of these things are taken into consideration as we get input, as we look at the data and the research and the information that is being provided to us to make the best educated decision about it. And so the outcome of that is here in Los Angeles County, we have a second Latino majority district that has come about through this process. And so this is the first of its kind. This possibility is there, right? Folks still have to elect the person of their choosing, of course.
Right. And see, that's the other process. That's like going more in depth into the democratic process, which is like before choosing who's going to be representing, is be like, where are they going to be representing, right? And that's the question that was answered through this whole process. So with Sky, what are some of your thoughts and your organization's thoughts now that you've gone through this process?
Oh, absolutely. I think it is a lot more work than you think it is going in, but it's so rewarding to see community input actually be included in changing the maps. So we know that from the census that not just the state, but our country is so much more diverse than it's ever been, and it's only going to continue to be so. So it's really important that those communities have a say so that we're drawing things that are beneficial and uplifting the people who actually live there, not the people who used to live there or used to have power. So that's a really important thing that we saw at every level, at the congressional level, at the state Senate level, at the state assembly level, and we're seeing it at the local level as well. Another thing I would say is we're getting bigger. If you look at things like LA County is, of course, one of the most populous places in California as a state, but Riverside County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state and in the nation. So opportunities like census and redistricting give us a chance to see the county is so much bigger than it was 10 years ago. We actually need not just different lines, but more representatives because we're so much bigger. The people that represented before maybe it went from 60 people to went from 100 people. If we're thinking small scale, but think about that on the thousands and on the millions level of people. So it's really, really important that we kind of level out the numbers and get more people included so that there's more of an opportunity when elections come around that they're more representative.
Snaps to that. And we've been talking about power. We've been talking about changes and voices being heard. So this process got in for folks to participate in and have their voice heard. Why is that so important? Were people's voices not heard in previous redistricting processes?
Yeah, and it wasn't just previous processes. We saw it even in processes at the city council level. Polo was part of like the first independent commission for the county because in the past, county representatives were the ones who made the decisions themselves to continue getting elected. And I think we saw a lot of the same thing in the city council because it was just an appointed commission. And even with independent commissions, not everyone can participate. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. Like COVID's still here. Our communities are not able to go face to face with these commissioners, which is an opportunity that they had before. So they're facing technology barriers. Si una señora no tiene una computadora en su casa, how is she gonna log into Zoom and share her testimony? I tried hand-holding a lot of the community members and helping them, but there was just so much that I could do so that they could log in and share their testimony. Sometimes they didn't even know how to raise their hand on Zoom, and they had been waiting for 3 hours, and there was nothing else that I could do. I couldn't drive to somebody's house 3 hours away from me and help them do that. So many voices are still not being heard, even with these independent commissions.
Really important stuff, Karen, that folks actually go ahead and participate even after the barriers, right? Even after the barriers presented themselves, people still showed up, still participated, and got their voices heard, which is the important thing of all this. So thank you all. We'll be right back.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
We're back at CHIRLA TV. Estamos platicando aquí con unos compañeros sobre este proceso de dibujar nuevos distritos en California. Apolonio, si nos puedes platicar sobre esta nueva comisión que se creó en Los Ángeles, la importancia y luego también teniendo a gente como nosotros que estén participando, ¿no? Gente latina que esté participando, people of color that were part of this process.
Yeah, definitely. Es algo muy importante tener la oportunidad de servir en una comisión. The most important thing about it is there was a process for it, right? So there's a minimum requirement, right? You're supposed to be able to research and, do some reading and, all that stuff. But you don't really need to know the Voting Rights Act backwards and forwards because it's all explained to you during the whole process. So that was super helpful coming from a community organization into this space. What's also helpful is making sure the first 8 folks were picked by lottery. So if you imagine the diversity that exists right there, it's not going to be very big. So those 8 folks were chosen, then 6 more people were chosen based on where they lived in the districts, where some demographics in terms of race, the age, party. That's also, it had to be a mix of folks, which is why this independent approach, I think, is much more democratic than, say, an appointed official to do that. But yeah, that's why it's very important to have people of color that are going to be making these decisions because they understand the communities best, right? They're not making assumptions. They grew up in there. They have lived there for many, many years. And so they give you a unique perspective. And I think we were able to benefit because of that.
Yep, snaps to that. I'm really glad that you were part of this process as well. So congratulations and thank you for helping us out in that way, in that capacity, serving your community in that way. Sky, the organizations that participated, I'm sure, is a coalition. Can you talk a little bit about just that process of partners being involved in this?
Absolutely. So there are 40 million people that live in the state of California. Not all of us are able to watch 8-hour, 10-hour, 14-hour long commission meetings. Not all of us are able to study maps all day long and understand why it matters if a line is drawn at this street and not this street. So it's important that you work with other people, right? So one person or a couple people can watch the meeting and a couple people can draw the maps and a couple people can explain the process to people who aren't able to show up but still deserve to have their voices in the process. And by working with organizations like CHIRLA, like all the organizations across the state, like all the organizations within my community in San Bernardino and Riverside County, it's really important that we all work together, we all play our part so that all of us can get our say into the process, into the maps, and then into our civic engagement process as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And for you all at CHIRLA, Karen, how was it working with folks?
It was an opportunity for us to learn how to do redistricting. At CHIRLA, I don't think there had been a history of like the community getting involved in redistricting. It might have been like a staff giving a testimony once, but I first learned about redistricting by going to a meeting that Sky and I United held, and I saw how she was presenting to train the trainers. So she was training organizations, and I was able to bring this information, and based on my community knowledge, I tailored it to the needs of my community. So without other organizations, I don't think we would have been able to be part of this process. Some organizations had access to people who were drawing the maps. We at CHIRLA didn't have access to that, but we had access to a lot of community members who were ready to share their testimony. So trabajando juntos, teníamos personas de comunidades que servían a la comunidad inmigrante, comunidad latina, comunidad asiática, miembros que tal vez son de la comunidad afroamericana, y teníamos todas las comunidades juntas, que es lo que nos beneficia a todos, no solo los latinos, no solo los inmigrantes.
Qué poderoso escuchar eso. ¿Y qué te contaban los miembros cuando querían decir, queremos que esta comunidad esté con nosotros.
Sí, algunas veces decían, para San Bernardino la queremos con la ciudad de Colton o con la ciudad de Fontana, pero no la queremos allá con la comunidad de Redlands o de Mentone. Y les preguntaba, ¿pero por qué? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué dicen esto? Y obviamente necesitamos los comentarios de todos los miembros de la comunidad, porque yo crecí en Palmdale, yo te puedo hablar de Palmdale todo lo que sea, pero ellos saben qué es lo que es mejor para su comunidad, porque ellos viven allí, ellos trabajan allí, ellos van a las escuelas, a las iglesias de eso. Fueron muy importantes sus opiniones y aprender qué es lo que se quería.
¿Y con quién se identificaban?
¿Con quién se identificaban? Como por ejemplo en la ciudad de San Bernardino, al nivel del Congreso y del Senado, de la Asamblea, querían a la ciudad junta. Y no estaba junta. Ahora la Asamblea tienen toda la ciudad junta en el Senado y en la Asamblea. Esa fue una gran ganancia para nuestra comunidad.
Felicidades. Y bueno, regresamos para terminar este segmento muy interesante de este proceso.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
We're back at CHIRLA TV, passing it right on to Sky here to talk to us about now that the lines have been drawn in California, the new lines, redistricting lines, what's next? Do people go somewhere to see their new district or just wait for the elections? What happens?
Yeah. So if you're looking at bigger ticket items like Congress, like state legislature, like your county, those lines are drawn and you can look all of that up online. So you just Google your county redistricting and then the map should come up. If you live in a city that maybe isn't Los Angeles City or San Bernardino City, they may still be doing redistricting. So you can look those cities up and participate and share your input there. Beyond that, definitely look up and see if your district has changed. Maybe you last year voted for someone for assembly member and now you have a new assembly member because the lines moved. So you want to know that going into this year, because there's also an election in June and then in November of this year, so that you have the information you need to decide who's best going to represent you moving forward.
And so for that part then, Karen, are the new lines, the new districts going to come into play for this upcoming election since there's midterm elections this year?
So they're going to come and play, but not for all jurisdictions. So that's something that we're going to be working with the community to educate them. So just a couple of days, we show the new maps to the community members. So now we're going to be doing a lot of voter education to show them the new maps, show them like the past map, the new map. And we're also going to be, with our sister organization, CHIRLA Action Fund, doing endorsements on the candidates. So as new lines are drawn, some of the candidates are no longer eligible to run for those districts. So there's a possibility for new exciting candidates run into these districts. Hopefully we can get people that are pro-immigrant that can pass legislation for like healthcare, for example, that support healthcare for all immigrants. So I think that's the exciting part, that we have elections this year and that we might be able to get representation. For example, the district Polo and the commission did, it's gonna have a new election that only happens every couple of years. So some people in San Fernando Valley, look out for that election. CHIRLA and CHIRLA Action Fund are gonna be talking a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and I think now listening to you both, Sky and Karen, talk about this whole process and the procedures, it's like folks now that probably felt or were left out, right? Left out, ignored, maybe even on purpose when we're talking about that others in power made decisions for those without power, right? Then a lot of these folks now with these new lines are going to have a voice out there depending on who's elected. But the important thing is for them to get elected, right? And then go out and vote. So folks who can vote to go out and vote to elect these folks. And Polo, from your experience as a first-time commissioner in LA County, for other folks who may be aspiring, they see you, they'd be like, hey, I look like that guy. I want to be like that guy. Maybe they don't look like that guy, but I want to be like that guy. What do you have to say for folks?
I have to say that if you're interested, go for it. Because we need as big a pool of candidates as possible to be able to have fair representation. So the way that I looked into it and being a community member, but also working for a community organization, I had a particular perspective in terms of coalition building, bringing folks to the table. The other was we had a lot of attorneys, we had a lot of folks that were in real estate, forming their lives, a lot of retired folks. folks that work with the API community, with the Black community, the churches. It's a whole swath of folks from all political parties. And so the more diversity we have in that initial pool and as an independent redistricting process, the better representation we're going to have. But if folks stay home and they don't think about it, we're never going to achieve that true representation.
That's right. So for little Jaden out there watching us right now, if they're 9 right now, 9 years later, new commission, 18 years old, so looking out here for all the Jadens out there and living in Southern California. But this has been a great segment. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for your work. It's such a huge, it's work that's oftentimes done in the shadows, right? That not a lot of folks know about. And we end up seeing the results without knowing who are some of the champions back there. I know you all are part of larger teams, but you all are here. So I want to thank each and one of you for your work in this important process. So thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?